My name is Nat Rivenbark, and I'll be discussing the dangers and ethical concerns surrounding generative AI. This is an incredibly timely issue as many companies are beginning to implement various aspects of AI into their platforms. Generative AI is also becoming accessible to just regular everyday people, and it's important that we consider how this could impact the information we receive online. First off, what even is generative AI? For anyone that doesn't know, AI stands for artificial intelligence. The generative part is added because the specific type of AI is being used to create something new. The AI system tracks patterns across large data sets, like a pool of images or text, so that it can create new data using the patterns it tracked. Generative AI has already been used for a while in many low-stakes environments, like how newsrooms have been using it to transcribe conversations and write headlines. But many of the problems arise when you ask the AI to gather information. We'll talk about what these problems are and why generative AI is unethical in the long run. It was recently found out that OpenAI, the company that introduced one of the most well-known text generators, ChatGPT, engaged in outsourcing graphic content to workers in Kenya. The workers were tasked with reading and labeling graphic passages to create filters for ChatGPT to avoid. The workers were paid between $1.30 and $2 an hour while being required to hit between 150 and 250 passages per 9-hour shift. A few of the workers gave anonymous statements to Time magazine, recalling how some of the passages were so vivid that they suffered recurring visions of disgusting and traumatic material. The contract between OpenAI and the outsourced company eventually ended early after the workers were asked to collect and label troubling and sometimes illegal images like child porn. Generative AI is also incredibly damaging to the environment, as just one search using generative AI costs 4 to 5 times the energy of a conventional web search. These massive facilities also require a large amount of water to cool their systems and generate power. Local residents from West Des Moines, Iowa, actually ended up suing OpenAI because their facility had used roughly 6% of the residents' water. This occurred a month before the facility had finished training its system, so one can imagine how much more water would be used once users start generating content. Little has been done to combat the environmental damage caused by generative AI, but Senator Markey has started the race. In his Artificial Intelligence Environmental Impacts Act of 2024, he explains the need for environmental regulations, as it's already been seen how much these systems consume energy and water, how they require large amounts of land for their facilities, and how e-waste is already accruing from replacing old or damaged hardware for these systems. The act has not been passed yet. I mentioned earlier that generative AI tracks patterns across datasets to make new content. Image scraping is a method on how these AI systems are able to do that. Image scraping is the act of generative AI systems automatically collecting data from various sources, including sites where human artists showcase their work. Not every generative AI company is upfront about what resources they use to train from. For instance, Stable Diffusion does say what datasets are used, but Midjourney and OpenAI do not. These companies are only able to generate new content because they have consumed content that already exists. OpenAI does actually have an opt-out form for artists to remove their images from the datasets, but the creator is responsible for submitting the form. Even then, OpenAI mentions that their images may still be included if they can be accessed through third-party licensing platforms. Many artists are upset and deeply troubled by the looming threat of generative AI, as their works are being copied, many times without them even knowing. Popular Polish artist Greg Rutkowski is often used as a prompt in these generators, but he's worried for his livelihood. If a machine can copy his style, then why would anyone need to commission him for his uniqueness? He also mentions that he never gave permission for any company to include his artwork in their dataset. Emilion on X is also just one of the many artists expressing their hurt and discomfort on social media after finding out that their work has been used without their knowing. From their post, it is clear that the use of generative AI has caused them tremendous grief. As much as we try as a society to be as inclusive and respectful as possible, there is still an enormous amount of biased, stereotypical, and problematic content online. The issue with generative AI is that it cannot discern harmful and nuanced statements like a human can. These harmful statements and images are included in the data sets it learns from, which means that the AI will sometimes produce biased and stereotypical content. One experimenter used ChatGPT to generate recommendation letters. The AI praised the work ethic and skills for male candidates while only praising superficial and exterior qualities like grace and beauty for women. Similarly, a different experimenter told ChatGPT to create 2 crime stories, with one using the word black and the other using white. ChatGPT produced an aggressive and dark story when the black man was the main character, while the story with the white man was less aggressive. It's not just generated text that has these issues. Generated images will also perpetuate stereotypes, such as the prompt nurse showing women, while lawyers generates men. Take a look at this example from Daily Awesome on TikTok. They are showing the most stereotypical women in each state according to AI. Most of the generated women appear normal, but then this woman from Maine has claws for hands. While this is way less harmful than gendered or racially biased images, it's a great example to show how AI cannot decide for itself what is accurate or problematic. We know that women in Maine do not have claw hands, but generative AI lacks that human common sense. Copyright and ownership of AI images vary between platforms. Parrott and Stroud explain that OpenAI holds the copyright for images rendered, but the users retain ownership of their prompts. However, they later point out in the article that it can get tricky since OpenAI does not own the source material in the training datasets. So who actually owns the content? This post from Logan Preshaw shows why ownership of AI images can be very tricky. The image on the right is the original art created by a human artist, while the left is AI generated. Should a generative AI company really be able to hold ownership of an image that is pretty much directly copied from someone else's work, and it removes all credit to the original artist? This isn't really a new work at all, but rather a plagiarized copy. The United States Copyright Office actually has an answer as to who or what can be copyrighted in regard to AI material. They state that they will only approve copyright if the work has been created by a human. If a work contains some AI material and the rest was done by a human, then only the work done by the human will be registered for copyright. We've talked a lot about ethical concerns, but here's some of the dangers of generative AI. First of all, people are using this technology to scam people online, especially our vulnerable populations. A lot of these scammers are using Facebook to post AI-generated images for engagement on their post, which will boost their page or account in the algorithm. Then, they are able to send out external scam links. A lot of these pages posting AI images have been hacked and repurposed into something else for their operation. We're also seeing a rise in fake celebrity endorsements. There was one recently about Taylor Swift sponsoring Le Creuset cookware, and many victims purchased this fake product. They end up paying a lot of money and never receiving anything for it. Deepfakes are images or videos that use someone's likeness and generated content. With deepfakes, you can put someone's face onto someone else's or put someone in an entirely new situation. The danger with deepfakes is that most people are not giving their consent to be put into generated content, or people are using their likeness for ill intent. For example, Taylor Swift was again a victim of generative AI, as people were creating inappropriate and sexual deepfaked content about her. Not even the president is safe from deepfakes, as people use Biden's voice to urge New Hampshire residents not to vote in their upcoming election. The Department of Homeland Security is aware of the danger and the many nefarious uses of deepfakes, but no legislation has been made yet since we don't have the technology to accurately identify them. This is what makes deepfakes so dangerous, as they are easily believable. Lastly, these AI generators can just be downright incorrect. ChatGPT can be great for brainstorming ideas or outlines, but it should not be trusted to provide factual information. Kim and Moon conducted an experiment to assess how helpful ChatGPT was during an assessment. Between the control and experimental group, it found no real difference in the scores when used in reading and writing, but the experimental group did much worse in math than the control when using ChatGPT. They explain it as the subjects with low math ability were not able to correctly gauge whether ChatGPT had given them a truly correct answer or not. This post from River Tam shows how fickle and unreliable ChatGPT is. At first, the bot provides an answer without a source. When questioned, the bot cites a real book that would not be plausible, as the book would have been published after the date in the original question. It then creates a fake book, mentions online sources, and ultimately changes its mind about the original answer it gave. It can be easy to just blindly believe the answer AI gives you if you aren't thinking critically about it. Even lawyers have fallen victim to blindly believing ChatGPT. One of the lawyers asked ChatGPT for court cases about an issue, supposedly not fully understanding how the program worked. Despite not being able to find anything on the cases in his records, he used them anyway in an actual court filing. The second lawyer trusted his partner and did not check the work behind him. If our trusted professionals are blindly using generative AI, it could create a lot of serious problems for their constituents. There has been a lot of information presented here, and you might be wondering why you should care about the dangers and ethical concerns surrounding generative AI at all. To put it simply, this is becoming an accessible tool with little moderation or consequence for using it. There is nothing in place to protect you from becoming a victim of scams, a victim of deepfaked material, or a victim of having your original work copied without your consent. It's essential that you practice and use information literacy skills while browsing online. Anyone can post generated AI content, and it can be very hard to determine if it's legit or not. Nothing should be taken at face value. Take a few seconds longer to really analyze an image and see if there's an inconsistency. Instead of clicking on a link right away, take a second to search for it yourself and see what comes up. Always double check to see if what someone is claiming is true, especially if you yourself are using ChatGPT or other sources for information. We should also just listen to our moral compass when it comes to generative AI. The only reason we are able to generate content is because it is using content that's already been made. It completely disrespects the time and effort that people put into their work, as it can just be copied and pasted, normally at a worse quality. Is one generative search worth the damage it's causing to the environment, or is it worth subjecting outsourced workers to traumatic content just to make sure these systems don't generate that for us? Everyone should think very critically about generative AI. While it can be a helpful tool, it's very important that we take it with a grain of salt. And these are my references. Thank you for listening.